fit, does it?
I don't think so. I don't know. I just talk. Yes, it will. Ladies and gentlemen, we are running a bit behind, so we'd like to get going on our second panel. Thank you to Richard and Jasmine and Eric and David and Jennifer for that first panel. I wish we had more time. It was a great conversation. But we're going to continue that conversation in a bit of a different direction. Our second panel, we're calling The Brave New World, Changes of Tomorrow. And this is going to take us into the future a little bit further and with anticipation of this new landscape. Our moderator for the second panel is Matthew Owen. Matthew obtained his BA in political science from University of Guelph and his law degree from University of Toronto. Matt initially started off doing mostly accident benefits and tort work in motor vehicle accident law, but his interests have really broadened his practice. He's now part of the coverage group. He's doing product liability. He's been involved in a lot of the appellant work at the firm. And he's established himself as someone capable of much more, and we're looking forward to see the direction that he takes the sharing economy practice group, which he is co-chairing. Tom Hanrahan, of course, is one of our founding fathers. Tom practices mainly in property and... That wasn't a joke. Tom practices mainly in property and general liability, but he really has worked in all aspects of insurance, including business interruption, products liability and fraudulent claims for arson and stock losses. On the personal injury side, Tom has handled a variety of different types of claims, from motor vehicle accident to commercial passenger, sport injury, and slip and falls. Tom has provided coverage opinions on almost every aspect of property policy and has handled marine losses for ocean-going and land marine warehousing. And while he likes all of that, what Tom really loves is going to trial. Tom teaches at the trial advocacy course and has also taught the CIP and the FIIC insurance courses at the University of Toronto. Marni Miller on the end has been with ZTGH since 2008, first as an articling student and now since 2016 as our partner. Marni, as many of you know, worked in the insurance industry for many years prior to becoming a lawyer. She was an accident benefits adjuster and also worked in special investigations. Marni is co-chair of our special investigations practice group at the firm. She practices primarily in first-party claims, but not surprisingly, she's developed a practice that with an emphasis on fraud-related files, as well as catastrophic claims and intercompany disputes. Again, we have three great guest panelists with us, and this is really going to be a fantastic opportunity for us to hear a whole bunch of different perspectives on these issues. Raed Kadri is the Director of Automotive Technology and Mobility Innovation at the Ontario Centre of Excellence, which is an organization that drives the development of Ontario's economy by helping create new jobs, products, services, technologies, and businesses. He holds a Bachelor in Applied Science in Industrial Engineering, a Master of Science degree in Industrial Engineering, and a Master of Science in Business and Development Research. He is currently working on a doctorate in Business Administration. Willie Handler is a name that probably most of you recognize. Willie operates a consulting practice following 33 years in various positions in the Ontario Public Service. He is one of Ontario's foremost experts on auto insurance, having worked for over 20 years in auto insurance regulatory policy for the Ontario government, including 4 major reforms of the Ontario auto insurance system. Charles Gluckstein is a lawyer at Gluckstein Personal Injury Lawyers. He is a specialist in civil litigation, which encompasses personal injury, motor vehicle accident claims, medical and professional negligence, as well as occupier liability issues. He commands a thorough knowledge of all relevant automobile legislation. He's a past president of OTLAW and has been recognized by his peers as one of Canada's best lawyers. He is consistently recommended on personal injury as a personal injury expert in the Lexpert directory. He was the recipient of the Lexpert Zenith Award in recognition for thought leadership and for setting new standards for the personal injury bar. A fun fact about Charles, out of everyone in this room, he's the guy who I've known the longest. I have the great privilege to call him a friend from high school, and I brought the proof so you would all know. It was the 80s, like, you know. So, yeah, that's right. Opening for the trial. Again, I remind you all, if you have any questions for the panel, get your lawyer to email them to Matt, and he'll try to get your question directed. So I hand it over.
Okay, thank you, Heather. So I know it's cliche to say that the world is changing at a dizzying pace, but it is, and it's going to continue to do so. It's already old news that we summons a stranger through our smartphone if we need a ride. Our cars now park themselves. They navigate highways without us having to touch a steering wheel. They can change lanes on their own. They can anticipate danger and brake. We're quickly moving towards a cashless society where our currency is digitally stored into centralized blocks of information, not issued by a government, but by the users of the system. And there's no question that change forces us, including insurers, to adapt. But change brings new opportunities in spawning unique products capable of responding to those changes, and those who anticipate change and are prepared for it will do the best. And so it's with that in mind that I'm pleased to begin this panel. We know that Google and other companies already have driverless cars on the road today. Last week, Uber announced a partnership to mobilize a fleet of flying cars. Charles, maybe you can start. Are we really on the brink of this driverless future?
I'm so happy to have the first word. Sometimes plaintiff lawyers are used to that, so I want to thank you all for having me on this panel. I love to talk about technology. I love to talk about the future. Just a couple of broad comments, and I'll get specifically to the question. They say right now that 75% of what you see in Star Trek is either going to happen or it's being invented, and it's going to happen in our lifetime. It's crazy to live in this type of an era. So when George says, you know, the next 15 years are going to be amazing, I agree with him. I mean, we're going to see things that we would never have believed were possible. So coming back to our autonomous vehicle, which is just a crumb of what's going to happen in the future, we think about how is this possible? How can a car be as good as a driver, as a human driver? And it comes down to the technology. And you know, I talked about this to the Ontario Trial Lawyers Association 5 years ago, and they thought I was crazy to even be considering that this is actually going to happen. And it's happening. It's been proven. It's going to be on our streets. It's in the streets in Pittsburgh and Arizona, some parts of Europe. These cars are already out there. And how do they do it? They have cameras all around the car. So imagine a car with 8 cameras with the ability of LiDAR, which is a fancy radar system that sees like a bat. It has sensors all around it. We are not capable of comparing ourselves to that technology. And so we have this conflict of technology companies and car companies in terms of how they're going to introduce this type of product to the road. And you know, so the spread is, we know it's coming in 10 or 15 years, that it's going to be everywhere. But what is happening now? And we have this battle where the car companies who want to keep making cars are adding all these innovations, like Tesla, GM, all the products out there, Volkswagen, they're all coming out with their technology-improved cars. And then we have the software companies like Google and Uber and some other companies that really don't want you to have the ability to drive a car. So they want to come out completely in terms of a full driverless product at once. So there's that conflict, and that creates opportunities that we're going to talk about today. You can jump in.
I guess the answer to the question, are we really on the brink? And you know, like the Google cars has been on the road for a while now and driven around a couple million kilometers by now. It's got a better driving record than I do. So can we trust the technology? Probably more than you can trust me behind the wheel. The car hasn't, the the cars have actually, I think, been at fault in one real accident, and it was going about 5 kilometers an hour, only because it didn't know what the other car was, what the other car was going to do. It has no speeding tickets, and as a result, I think that over time it's going to take a while for people to feel comfortable and have some confidence, but these vehicles are logging, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of miles on initially on highways, but now in urban centers as well. And one thing for sure is that they when they become available, because the question is when is this going to happen? Nobody knows for sure, but when it is going to happen, the technology will probably be much more advanced as it is now, because they just keep collecting data all the time and keep perfecting the technology. So I'm very, very confident it's going to happen, and they're investing billions in the technology, and it's only a matter of time.
Just keep in mind that experts are saying, and there's a lot of experts saying this, that children born today will never get a driver's license. So there's an idea of the timing. That's what they think is going to happen.
What does that say about
16 years away.
vehicle ownership?
So the question about vehicle ownership. Anyone else want to handle that? Right now we're dealing with, I know my kids, they're connected to my Uber account, right? So they're in the shared economy. They don't really care about what vehicle they're in. They just got to get to wherever they want to get to. And, as a parent, it's kind of nice not having to drive them everywhere. So Uber provides an amazing service, but there's lots of issues with it that we're going to talk about as well.
My son, it was the same thing, just went through his driving lessons, finished his driving lessons, and advised me he has no interest in getting his driver's license. We live near the subway. He has an Uber account. He doesn't see any value in putting money into, my money, into getting a car, paying for insurance, unfortunately, gas. The concept is completely different with the kids versus most of us sitting in this room in terms of what they see their connection with a vehicle down the road.
I think for young people particularly, because one of the things that really hit me the more I was reading up about this was, one of the statistics I read was that if you own a car, 95% of the time the car is sitting. And when I first read that, I thought, okay, that can't be right. And then I thought about my own situation. Drive to the GO train, leave my car at the GO train, come home, drive back home, park at my parking lot, and it sits there. So it's getting to the point where a lot of people are saying, is this a worthwhile investment? And as Marni said with her kids, a lot of young people are saying no. And I think it depends, and we're going to see this, that the evolution will be quicker in urban centers, where you've got the infrastructure, you've got public transportation available to you. I've got a son and daughter-in-law that live in New York City, have never owned a car in their life, and never really had the need to. They both drive, but they don't have any need for a car. And it's all available there, whether it's Uber, whether taxi, or whatever.
Think of the demand and where it's being driven from. So, no pun intended. But you've got millennials who want to get to where they want to get. They don't really care about ownership. And then you've got an aging population. We just saw the stats in our country where the older population is outnumbering the millennials. And they're having to get retested for their driver's license. They have some independence issues, some of them. And this idea of getting free transportation brings them independence. So there's those two ends of the population spectrum that outnumber the middle end of the population spectrum. And we sit here wondering, well, driver's license was our identity. We wanted to have that freedom, but now you can have it in a lot of other ways. So that's driving one of the benefits.
And certainly the millennials in my family, and just looking, half of them do not drive. Not only do they not own a car, they don't even drive. They have never bothered to get a driver's license, and they have no plans to do so. And so the sharing economy it fits perfectly into their lifestyle.
I agree with what everybody's saying. But personally, myself, when I turned 16 years old, I was the first person at Service Ontario ready to get my driver's license. And I don't know, great, but I hear nowadays more and more that people are waiting a little bit longer, and some parents are actually encouraging their kids to go and get driver's licenses at 19, 20 years old, so that they can alleviate the burden of driving them around. But I think things are still in flux as to where things will land in terms of car ownership. There are these two opposing things going on, and as things continue to develop, we'll see where it will land. But something that somebody presented to me once that was interesting to think about was myself. I put everything in my car. I just throw all my stuff in the back, and I drive it around, and I got my stuff in my glove compartment. And so in terms of car ownership, what will you do? Will you be carrying around a duffel bag everywhere you go with all your stuff in it that you transfer from in terms of sharing economy, in terms of vehicles? Will you carry it around everywhere you go? How will you? We'll have to learn to not to have to carry just very small amounts of stuff with us and not have things readily available as they are right now. Like I said, for me personally, in my vehicle, where I know I can just go to my car and grab what I need. Somebody brought presented that thought to me, and I thought it was very interesting. But it's interesting to think about how we'll evolve in terms of how we our personal, what we carry around with us all the time as the sharing economy starts to unfold.
How do we expect this technology to be rolled out, and in what sectors can we expect to see fully autonomous technology used first? Tom?
Somebody go for Tom. Go first. Want me to lead it off?
Sure.
Yeah, so I mean, there's all sorts of graphs that show you how it's going to integrate into our society. Here we are getting close to 2020 when every car company says they've got an autonomous vehicle coming to market. And yet we all have all of our manual-driven cars, human-driven cars, on the road. And it's essentially cars last 20 years. So it takes 20 years to replace all the cars on the road. That's a lot of cars to replace. So we think about the technology that's out there. I follow this genius futurist guy by the name of Ray Kurzweil. He used to run the DARPA sort of language program and invented Siri for DARPA, which they then sold to Apple, and he got hired by Google, and now he runs their artificial intelligence unit. And this is sort of a little bit off topic, but it's a fun topic, so I'm just going to segue to it for a minute, and then we'll go back to that. So he says we will be in what's called the singularity. How many people know what the singularity is? Good. All right, another techie. The singularity is when artificial intelligence is equal to human intelligence. He says we will be there in 40 years. 40 years. We're still here. We're still alive. And computers will be as good at everything that we are. So that's every job. That's not just the auto industry. That's everything that we do can be replaced by computers. That's pretty scary. And then what comes after the singularity is the really scary part, because then computers start to teach themselves how to be smarter than us, and then we're into this problem of how do we keep up. And Kurzweil's solution is we have to implant computers into our head in order to keep up and stay advanced, because our brain can only handle 4 pegaflops, and we have to be able to stay ahead of that. That's a little bit off topic. But that gets us to the idea of how cars are going to be adopting and emerging into this area. So all these miles that are being driven are actually learned miles. The computers start off like an infant, and they are learning the technology. They're learning the roads. They're mapping the roads. They're not learning from human behavior. They're learning from their own behavior and teaching themselves how to drive. And that will take many years. So some car companies are doing it incrementally, and some are waiting till all that knowledge is there. But we believe, that the experts believe that by 2020 we will be in this first era of autonomous vehicles. They're sort of everywhere on the road. And then in about 20 years or so, we're going to see the replacement of all the fleet by these autonomous vehicles. And so how can we see this happening in cities? So take that carpool lane. Well, that's perfect for the first autonomous vehicle lane on the highway. You can't go in there unless you're an autonomous vehicle. That's what the governments will do. They'll start off with that lane. They'll make it 2 lanes. They'll make it 3 lanes. And eventually, the highways will be restricted for autonomous travel. And then, what do we do with the cities? You'll start to ban manually driven or human-driven cars from the cities. It'll take a lot more time for the rural areas to get restrictions the same way. But think of it, it's as significant as the horse and carriage era being replaced by the internal combustion engine. You'll be going out to the country to drive your car on a track if you want to do that.
And just to add to that, and I think Charles alluded to this right at the start. It's really split into two really models. One is driven by traditional automakers who are along for the ride, so to speak, because they have to be. But they want, they see the traditional model of car ownership because it's in their best interest that everybody own one or two cars or more, and they've been introducing autonomous vehicles on an incremental basis and at different stages. And so, it starts off with radar-controlled, operated cruise control and emergency braking and things like that. It's very incremental. The tech companies, they haven't introduced any car. They don't sell any cars right now, and it's who knows if they ever will. But the model they're following is they aren't going to introduce a car into the marketplace until it's completely autonomous, which scares the hell out of, I think, the automakers to a certain extent. And so Google doesn't trust any of us. They don't want a car that is even partially operated by a human being. They want a car and that's why it's going to take a while. They won't have a car out by 2020. They want a car that can be completely operated by a computer, and we just sit back and go along for the ride. And then the other factor, which I think we're going to get into in a couple of minutes, is we, society, have to be ready. And society, that includes the government, businesses, because it's going to change the way we live. And our infrastructure has to be ready for an autonomous vehicle.
Yeah, and on that point, Rod, maybe you can help describe the landscape in Ontario by explaining a little bit about what the OCE does and what they're doing to support innovation in Ontario.
Yeah, most definitely. So the Ontario Centres of Excellence is a not-for-profit that's funded by the province, and some programs are funded through the federal government. But what we try to do is encourage collaboration between industry and academia to commercialize some of these cool, innovative technologies from our very, very strong academic institutions in the province. But we're doing more and more as well as supporting technology development, demonstration, and adoption across multiple sectors. So we're sector agnostic, and I can go through all our programs right now, but there's quite a few, and you can go on our website and take a look at it. In terms of connected autonomous vehicles, we did a pilot program that supported some industry academic collaborations to try to commercialize the technologies that will hopefully enable the next generation of vehicles. But also what we did was support direct product development within our tech companies and our startups and entrepreneurs and small companies in Ontario to help us develop the new technologies as well as that will provide some sort of economic benefit to Ontario and to help support kind of the global autonomous vehicle space. So OCE is helping out, and just so you guys know, in Ontario we've got a pretty strong, I think everybody hears about the Toronto-Waterloo Tech Corridor. There's quite a strong cluster in Ottawa, and that comes from all of the telecommunications industry there. So we've got quite a strong cluster there. So we've got these clusters across the province. We're seeing, and again, we're supporting this as well, a lot of entrepreneurship that's coming up with these new and creative ideas that are enabling what we're seeing today and some of the stuff that will come in the future. And then more recently, I don't know if anybody read the provincial budget last week. Anybody? Raise your hand. No? Good. Well, maybe you didn't catch this, but the province is actually investing $80 million in an autonomous vehicle innovation network. And that's in partnership with the Ontario Centres of Excellence, and that'll to do a bunch of things, and one of them is to create a demonstration zone for autonomous vehicles in Stratford, Ontario. So I think there's quite a bit of cool and exciting things to come around this space, and I think Ontario is in terms of our strengths in technology development, in terms of our parts sector, which is a very strong sector in our province. We have quite a bit of OEM manufacturers, and we've got quite a bit of large tech companies. And we're seeing more and more coming to Ontario because of all these cool things and clusters that we have going on, to invest, to try to capitalize on the strengths that we have and bring it into whatever space that they're going to do. And we're seeing all these technology platforms that are sector agnostic, but can be focused into different products like the vehicles of the future, trains of the future,
Thank
so on
you.
and so forth.
It's clear that the introduction of autonomous technology and vehicles is going to change the communities and the way we live. But there's challenges also, aren't there, Marni? Can you talk a little bit about what sort of roadblocks might be faced to this driverless future?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about, for example, difficulties we'll have with the accident benefits. And I know that in some of the jurisdictions where autonomous vehicles are being implemented, and I think we're going to talk about this a little bit separately, this whole concept of product liability scheme in terms of dealing with accidents or incidents that arise out of the use of these vehicles. And how will this affect, for example, accident benefits in Ontario? And I think that we can even look at just the Marshall Report, where we've got an extremely entrenched accident benefit no-fault scheme in this province. And for example, moving towards a strict product liability scheme wouldn't really be consistent with the type of history that we have here and the type of benefits and system that we have that guarantees access to early, quick, efficient medical benefits, income benefits for injured parties, and a product liability scheme is completely at odds with that. So I don't necessarily agree, although I know other jurisdictions have implemented it, that with autonomous vehicles that it's going to get rid of a no-fault system, because I don't think that with the history that we have here that would necessarily be possible. I think that it might be some combination of a hybrid scheme where almost like there is now with tort, where it's you go after the manufacturer for certain circumstances, but immediate types of benefits have to be available, because otherwise you're moving everyone out of this system for accident benefits into a pure tort scheme again, and there's going to be a delay in access to benefits for people. So from that perspective, I think there's a lot of thought and consideration that has to go into how all of these things are going to affect how we pay people when they're injured.
Yeah, and it raises quite a few liability issues that we will talk about. Do you have something to add to that, Willie?
I agree in the short term that that's the case, because for 15, 20 years, we're going to have a mix of manually operated vehicles and autonomous vehicles. And as such, there are going to probably be just as many accidents as there are now, if not more. Because you as a driver have to respond to the behavior of a machine and the behavior of other people who are operating the cars, and it's going to be very confusing. But I think beyond a 20-year period where there's only autonomous vehicles, the concept of no fault, as far as I'm concerned, is just going to disappear. It's just, there won't be a need and a demand for it. The few accidents that exist are going to be strictly product liability, and they'll probably the entire insurance system will be restructured to address that. And I think that's something that we have to understand, is the law is going to have to evolve. I think about the state of New York, for example, doesn't have any autonomous vehicles being tested on their roads. The reason being is there is a state law that requires that you have two hands on the wheel of your vehicle all the time. So until that, so law, statutes and regulations have to keep up with advancement of technology, and that's a key point moving forward on this stuff, is that technology is moving faster than the government is.
Yeah, Tom.
Yeah, I think the transition period is going to be the most difficult one, where we're in the stage now of the semi-autonomous vehicles, and there's a whole series of issues with that. And then when we move into the autonomous vehicles, there's a lot of people that are predicting that once we are in the fully autonomous vehicles, insurance will be just part of what you buy when you buy a car. You will get a package that will protect you. And some of the automakers now are saying that if, in fact, there is an issue with the vehicle that's caused as a result of the software or something else, then they will pay for the claim that comes out. But in the meantime, you know, I think particularly in regard to what we've seen so far, we are going to be looking at a bit of a hybrid package. We're going to have policies that have to adapt to the concept that it's almost partially a products liability policy, but it's still a standard auto policy as we know it until that transition becomes complete.
I think that, I'm not sure in which jurisdiction, if it's in Europe, but I know that Tesla is offering a policy with the purchase of their vehicle.
Yeah, in
So when
Asia.
you buy a Tesla, you get a policy underwritten, I believe, by Tesla. And, or it's not underwritten by Tesla?
Not yet, but they're looking into that.
Or they're considering it, so that it's going to be part of the warranty purchase of the vehicle. And so yes, the difference between now and when we're fully autonomous is going to be a very different landscape, but the mixture of getting there is going to be where obviously all the difficulty is.
I agree with most of the comments about this sort of transitional phase. What I don't agree is you mentioned, Willie, that there's going to be an increase in claims for a period of time because of the confusion. There is going to be confusion, but this technology brings unbelievable benefits, and it's immediate. So, you know, they can talk to you, the tech companies that have put out their cars have had a reduction of accidents. So why is Volvo guaranteeing that you won't have a death in their car? In fact, they're coming out with airbags on the front of their hood. So even if they hit a pedestrian, the pedestrian won't have a bad outcome until they hit the ground. They forgot about that part. But they won't have the bad impact from the hood. So, I mean, the car companies are aware of that, and I do think claims will go down. I'm planning to buy a Tesla in the next few years. I expect I'll be safer in that car. So, you know, but there's other greater benefits. So lower traffic collisions, like now we're sort of under the 60,000 collision mark in Ontario. I think when I started practice almost 20 years ago, we were over 100,000 injury collisions in Ontario. So that's without autonomous vehicles. So the technology as it rolls out, that was just airbags and seatbelt use and things like that, lane warning systems. Now we have steering control, accident avoidance, rear view cameras. We have all sorts of technology to lower property damage, to lower injuries, and we're going to see huge benefits. And, you know, in my industry, in your industry, that means less work for us, of course. Before we get fully autonomous, we're going to be down to 40,000 collisions, to 30,000, to 20,000, until we're at that 95% magic number that they say they're going to avoid in 20 years when everyone's autonomous. So I think it is a gradual change. What does that mean? That's more resources for government because less medical visits, less hospital costs, less traffic enforcement, so less policing. And then as we get more autonomous, more green space, less carbon emissions, better use of the vehicles, that shared economy, which means that the cost is driven down for the public. So just like we're buying things online to cut out all those costs of what it takes to have a storefront, you're having the same thing with that Uberizing of everything else because you don't have that big purchase price and insurance costs.
I should point out the reason, this is the cynic coming out of me, that the reason I say that there's going to be an increase is it's not the autonomous vehicles will cause any accidents. It's the manual operated aggressive drivers who get frustrated with the autonomous vehicles will actually be in more collisions. It will be a short blip, but there will be an increase.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. That's right. But you know, there's a possibility that I see that those autonomous vehicles will drive them crazy.
But they will be at fault. They will be at fault. So they'll be, because you know, you got all the technology in the cars showing them that driver's at fault. So there's no tort claim, and their AB system will follow the Marshall report, which means you can't cash out your claim. So all they get is medical treatment.
Tom, I mean, that raises some questions about the apportionment of liability during this gray area. You have manual cars where people are potentially at fault. You have autonomous software that's potentially at fault. You have third-party software. It sounds like sorting that out could be highly technical and expensive both in time and resources. Are current tort and product liability rules enough, or is there a different system that might work?
Well, they're probably enough. The difficulty is that we're not used to dealing with them arising out of the same incident or the same claim. And even with the fully autonomous vehicles, there's going to be situations where we're going to be dealing with more than a products liability claim. And the difficulty is that, well, to use an example, if you have an autonomous vehicle that's driving down the street and it turns the wrong way on a one-way street, and the reason that it turned the wrong way on the one-way street may not have had anything to do with the software in the car. It may have been that there was an interruption, say, in the signal between the satellite and the vehicle. Well, is that satellite signal a product? Under current law, it's not. It's a service. And so now you're into general tort law and you're into products liability as a potential overlap as well. So, you know, these areas are going to continue. You know, it's not going to be just products liability claims that we're dealing with.
Charles, what do you think? Do you think?
Well, I heard satellite, and just to be clear, Tesla came out the other day to explain why they don't have LiDAR on their cars. They have 8 cameras, they have all these other sensors. Their standalone computer is to replace the human driver. There's no interactivity with Wi-Fi or satellite communication. It's a brain on wheels that's supposed to be smarter than your brain. And so it's not about, because that would, I think, scare everyone. If we have some kind of solar eclipse and all the cars start crashing, I don't think that's the issue. But I just wanted to correct that point. I forgot what your question was.
No, I was just, I'm wondering, do you think governments are going to make plaintiffs sort out these liability questions, or is there a better way?
It's going to change our practice, and at this point, I mean, it's kind of like the airbag technology, and when you luckily in this jurisdiction, most people have $1 million limits, but in the US, product liability is part of all the collision cases that are serious in the US. They always bring in the manufacturer of some part and try to pin it on the manufacturer because they have the deeper pocket. Here we haven't had to work that hard as plaintiff lawyers. We will have to work that hard to keep our practice thriving if in this new era of technology, because you're going to blame the driver to some extent, but if it's autonomous and there is no steering wheel, you can't blame the driver. It's going to be the technology, and you're going to have some good expertise to understand how the technology works, from the software to the actual mechanics of the car. Your engineers are going to be very busy, and those aren't easy cases because you basically have 2 types of defects, right? You have the manufacturing defect and you have the design defect, and there's a reason why plaintiff lawyers don't do a lot of this work. It's extremely expensive to do this work. To try to say that car came off the assembly line and had a defect is that's kind of a gift if you can find that, and you have a good case. But most of the time, you're pointing at the design to say, well, that airbag, should have released on that corner angle instead of on a head-on collision. You're going to have a tough time going up against the car manufacturer who spent billions of dollars designing this thing to say that in this one instance, you didn't think about how this should work. And I think that's going to be a challenge for a lot of us to figure out.
And I think in the United Kingdom, for example, they've passed a law recently requiring the owner's insurance to pay the claim and pursue the manufacturers independently. It seems like they're ahead of the game, at least in Canada, compared to Canada, when it comes to considering these issues. Marni, is Canada ready? Have we done anything?
Well, I think that one of the things that Charles mentioned, that it's not just understanding the technology, it's how to access it. So it's how to get at this proprietary software and find out what it knows and what it can tell us about what happened. Most of us are familiar with black boxes, are kind of old hat already on vehicles. Getting it downloaded, the trick is getting it downloaded before it's overwritten or the car is totaled and it's no longer accessible. So the question is, getting this information and then understanding it. So it's the two things go hand in hand. I don't think we're at that point yet. I know that there's very few files. I deal with a lot of fraud stuff, and I have very few files where the file comes to me where anyone's looked at the black box or had access to the black box. And in a couple of my cases where they have, it's made the entire case, where it's a staged accident. But so getting that information out before you can even have somebody review it is extremely important. I don't think we're there as an industry, but I don't think the technology is there as well, because the companies have complete control over it. So getting access to the information and the data, and we don't even know what kind of data that they're collecting and transmitting in terms of what they are, what they're recording, what kind of data are they collecting. So that's also a big difficulty.
And just to add to that, the standards aren't the same. I mean, some use cameras, some use radar, some use sonar. So it's not like we have one standard. Like airbags went through this as well. They had different types of black boxes. And you get to the earlier ones, you wouldn't even know how to interpret the data, let alone be able to get it.
Right, I mean, right now with black boxes, your engineer has to have the software for that specific company in order to download it. It's not standard, and deciphering it is not necessarily standard, and that's black boxes that have been around for a long time. Now we're talking about autonomous cars where there's no way without a fight, a lot of these companies are giving up access to the data that they're collecting.
I was just going to say, there's a question of whether we'd even have access to it if it's proprietary,
Correct.
or as you said, they're all using different standards or different technology that might be patented or a trade secret. So the admissibility of that evidence would be an interesting issue as well. Raed, I want to give you a chance to speak over there, sort of break
I'm just
through.
happy to be here. I always wanted to be a lawyer. I
Thickness
feel,
of some
I
of
feel
these
amongst
legal
friends.
questions. When we spoke on the phone, we talked a little bit about a potential roadblock to the introduction of autonomous vehicles being investments in our urban centers. Can you speak about that for our audience a bit?
I don't know about. See, I think in terms of, I brushed up on my suits before I came in, so I can speak like a lawyer as I'm here. But I think things are in flux, and lots of things are moving very quickly. And you have auto companies that are investing quite a bit of money into technologies, and we see quite a bit of highly automated vehicles that are being introduced to the market. And I think everybody's watched it. I think BMW and Intel just partnered to put together a highly automated vehicle. I mean, highly automated, you can read the article what it means, but it means that it's a little bit more advanced than what we've seen so far. And I think that vehicle-to-vehicle communication and those types of things are ever increasing on the vehicles that we're going to see more and more. And as things evolve, I think, again, being in flux and with the tech companies and this drive and this investment in terms of product development, I think in terms of the technologies that are becoming available to enable these vehicles, we don't really know if there are going to be any roadblocks just yet. And I think that the continuing to drive forward and pushing forward on these technologies, on these vehicles, and developing them will help us to unlock a little bit more in terms of the challenges that we'll see and help us to overcome them and find the solutions to overcome them. I mean, I think we talked about, and this is probably one of your questions, so I'm stealing it from you, like traffic lights. I mean, it's yet to be seen if we'll need them. I think that was the initial question that we chatted, is yet to be seen if we're going to need them. You asked me that anymore, yet to be seen if they're going to go away, because there are other considerations that we need to think about as just pedestrians that also require those systems to tell them when it's time to cross the road and tell the autonomous vehicles when it's time to stop. So we still need those kind of visuals to help us there, and bikes are also there. So those types of considerations that we have to put forward. So I think everything is kind of speculation because things are moving so rapidly. And I kind of think about just in the time period when I grew up when they first introduced like the internet. So I'm a little bit younger, and but now, like, thinking about where it's gone so far, then I think about my grandmother who Skypes me, and she probably was around when there weren't even phones, and look at that time period, the timeline from when she was young to video chat, which we've become so accustomed to and is is readily available. Nobody would have seen that coming. It's evolved so quickly, and so there's a lot of undetermined things and cool things that we see. As long as we continue to drive forward, we're going to see the things come apparent, and we'll be able to overcome them going forward.
And as George suggested earlier, in order for this technology to work seamlessly in our urban centers, a fully autonomous world, you need sensors in traffic lights, traffic signs, in the road, right? And these are, the technology might be there, but these are very expensive endeavors. And while the private sphere might be investing in the technology, they're not necessarily going to invest in installing this technology in our urban centers, which will fall on governments. Before we move on, and we do have to move on, we're running out of time, and we promised a discussion about ride sharing and the sharing technology. I am interested to hear from our lawyers how you anticipate that this technology might change your practice.
Yeah, it's a touchy topic, and I was being a bit facetious when I put George on the spot to answer that difficult question to his audience, which is you guys. I'm also not a few weeks younger than George, like Eric is, and I have still a long career left, and I have to figure out, I don't just have 15 years. I've got to think about beyond that, and I've got an office that I run with a big staff. How, it's a great thing for society that we could eliminate injuries and save all those lives. And there's these are all great positive steps for our society. And as a lawyer, we will find other areas to practice in. There are interesting areas that come out of the technology, and some of it has to do with the data they collect. What are they doing with this data? I mean, you can imagine a time where you're going in your driverless car, and it's going to take you shopping to where you thought you wanted to go but didn't tell anyone because it's tracking your habits. And you may not want that to give up all that privacy. So there may be privacy violations. We have dabbled in other areas only to find that, they're not as easy as motor vehicle. We've been practicing as a firm in medical malpractice, and it's not an easy area. Professional negligence is hard to prove. Liability and causation are big issues that don't come up a lot in motor vehicle law. So it is hard to transition and have the type of practice, but we're lawyers and we're trained, and we can learn other fields. And I have the same advice to you all. You're all smart and well educated, and there'll be other areas that we can't imagine that are coming through. And this question was asked. I'll just wrap it up on this topic. But Ray Kurzweil was asked about the loss of jobs. Where are all these people going to go? And as we move into a society where everything is instantly available, you got 3D printers that make your shoes at home. You can put on your virtual reality helmet and travel the world and be taken anywhere through your driverless car and speak to your computer like it was your friend because you have artificial intelligence in it. Why do you need anything? But there'll be demand for more sensory satisfaction, whether it's your taste buds or hearing, and there'll be jobs centered around that area. There'll be jobs for artists like we've never imagined. So this is kind of an interesting time where we're moving out of sort of the mundane work, which we all, there's some work that we hated to do, administrative work, whatever it is, that'll be automated into stuff and more free time. And there was a time when there was a revolt going from the 12-hour workday to the 8-hour workday. We may be going from the 8-hour workday to the 4-hour workday. I don't know if that's such a bad thing for society.
Tom,
Think about that.
You only work 8 hours?
A day, times 7.
Tom, we have some precedents for ensuring autonomous vehicles currently in shipping, for example. Is that a model for this, or are we seeing a takeover of product liability and bodily injury cases?
Well, if you're talking about the policies that we've got now for the ride sharing, which is the fiscal policy, it's really what we were referring to earlier. It is a hybrid policy. For those that aren't familiar, in July of 2016, Fisco approved policies for 2 insurance companies, for Intact and for Northbridge, and it was to address 2 specific types of business. One was the Uber model, and the other one was the Rideco model. And Fisco said there had to be 3 basic things that had to be met in order for these policies to be issued. They could only be issued for commercial vehicles. they could only be issued for fleets greater than 5 vehicles, and there had to be either common ownership or common management of the vehicles. And then it's kind of interesting the approach they took, because they said these vehicles are not always going to be used as a commercial vehicle, so we need a policy that's going to be able to respond not only when they're being used as a commercial vehicle, but also when they're being used as a personal vehicle. And so, in fact, what they did was they set a policy where, depending on what the stage of the vehicle is and what its use is, the policy responds in different ways. If the person's driving the car around and they haven't accessed, say, the Uber app or one of the other apps, then it's being treated as personal use, and it's whatever personal use coverage they've arranged on the vehicle. But once they turn on if they're driving for Uber and they turn on the Uber app, it then comes under the commercial operation. And the way the policy works is that up to the point where they've turned on the app and they're just driving around, they still haven't, they're not on their way to pick someone up, or they haven't picked someone up, then the policy has different coverage than once they do pick someone up. Under the, and they call it the pre-acceptance stage, you have coverage under that for statutory accident benefits, uninsured motorist coverage, third-party liability coverage up to $1 million, family protection coverage for $2 million, and collision and comprehensive coverage subject to a $1,000 deductible. But you only get that coverage if you also have it as part of your personal package. And what's interesting is that once you pick up the person or persons that have called, and until the point you deliver them, the coverage then is different. Under that scenario, or that point in time, you then have the statutory accident benefits, the uninsured motorist coverage. You have $2 million in third-party liability, $2 million for family protection, and you have the same for the comp and collision coverage, again, providing you have it on your personal vehicle. In terms of the priority of ABs under that policy, that policy is priority for the driver and the owner, and for anyone else, it's settled in terms of determination for coverage as per Section 268.
Thanks for that. Marni, despite the good intentions of the industry with this new ride-sharing policy, questions still remain about the risk to the underlying insurer. Can you talk about that?
Well, I see. I read off the bat a few questions, and when Tom was talking about when this policy comes into effect, kind of in and out of effect, one of the big questions I have is, when does the trip end? Is it when the app is disengaged by the driver? But is it?
Yes,
because
it's whichever I think happens first, when the app is disengaged by the driver or the pedestrian.
Because
the
the
person
question,
gets out of the vehicle.
the question I have is that what if the trip is officially ended, but the passenger hasn't yet gotten out of the vehicle, and there's some incident when they're actually exiting the vehicle, right?
Right.
And so, has the trip ended? Which, is it the primary policy? Is it the secondary policy? So it's a question of, when is I see this as an area of litigation in this, is when does the trip actually end? Because there's going to be questions about that. But I think for example, questions of accident benefits, you have issues that arise with regards to priority, with regards to exclusions, with regards to WSIB.
What if you buy optional coverage on the underlying policy? It's not available
No.
with the fleet policy. Willie, could this cause problems?
Well, I see a few problems with the system as it is, because I don't think it was ever designed properly. I think the government, what they did was,
Weren't you the designer?
What? No, I was not. No, I was gone already. Uber didn't arrive until after I retired. What the government chose was something that was expeditious, but it wasn't. It's not a clean system. For a couple of reasons. One is, from the insurance perspective, if you have if you have a policyholder who drives part-time for Uber, you don't have any data in order to properly evaluate that risk. Uber has it, but they don't share it. So then again, access to data is always an issue. And then I have a big problem with the regulatory change that was made last year. The fleet policy was always designed for a discrete set of circumstances, which is that you have a group of vehicles, that are used for commercial purposes, and where the owner or the owner of the fleet has very specific has control over how the vehicles are used, who drives them, what circumstances they're driven. We'll have risk management systems in place to reduce the incidence of accidents, things like that. That doesn't exist if you're an Uber driver. And for years, Fisco fought off groups that tried to introduce what Fisco called synthetic fleets, which is they seem like they're all connected, but the critical part was that management doesn't really have true control, and Uber doesn't control anything about the vehicles. It's just a network of people who are making their cars available. So down the road, this is going to cause issues for the government, is because they are not going to be able to resist people who are going to present synthetic fleets, and it's going to destroy the fleet regulation. They should have created, under the Insurance Act, a provision specifically for transportation networks. These are not true fleets, despite the fact that they're now covered under the regulation.
I think one of the other difficulties that's going to come up too, and probably sooner than later, is that may not have been envisioned at the time they brought the regulation in along the lines of what you're talking about, Willie, is that it'd be all fine and well if these drivers were just driving for Uber, but they're also, many of them are on different apps. And so, just to use the two examples of Uber and Rideco, I mean, if they switch both of those on and they're driving around and then they're involved in an accident, which policy responds? Do they respond equally? Do they respond as per the limits? I mean, there's literally nothing to cover that type of scenario. And the information that's out there is that the high majority of these drivers are operating under more than one app.
And many taxi companies now have apps.
Yeah.
So, obviously you can be operating with multiple apps going at the same time, just looking for a fare.
I'm going to wrap it up there. We could obviously talk about this, all being big minds here, talk about this all afternoon, but we promised you cocktails. So I want to thank you for your attention and thank my panel very much.
Thank you very much to the panel. It's actually quite incredible to think that even a few short years ago, this would have been off the radar for most of us. It's wonderful to put on an event like this for you, and it only happens with the involvement of the generosity of our friends in the insurance industry. I would really like to thank all of our guest speakers today, George Cook, Jasmine Dea, Richard Schechter, Raed, Kadri, Willie Handler, and Charles Gluckstein. Please give them another round of applause because they've been absolutely fantastic. All of our guests take time out of their busy schedules to speak to all of us today. They do it because they're interested in these issues, they're interested in the industry, and I really, again, I thank them so much. It's great to hear different perspectives. The day is not quite done. We do have a cocktail hour. Before we move into the grand foyer, there are a couple things that I'd like to do just to wrap up. The first is to give out a whole round of other thank yous. Thank you to the Ritz Carlton Hotel for being gracious hosts to us. Thank you to all of our associates at Zarek, Taylor, Grossman, Hanrahan. If you have not yet had the opportunity to meet the lawyer that you've been dealing with on the phone or by email or by correspondence, please find them during cocktail hour. If you need any help, I'm happy to facilitate a meeting. Thank you to all of the staff at Zarek Taylor who are holding down the fort for us back at the firm, we hope. Thanks to our office manager, Catherine Buchan, who is over there. Thanks, Catherine. Our HR manager, Jolene Ogden. Thanks to Casey Hamilton. I'm not sure if she's in the room, but she is our law clerk / marketing right-hand gal, and she's been in charge of putting together the swag and doing any other tasks that we ask of her. You mostly met Carolyn, who was at the reception. She's also the person who you meet every time you call the front desk at Zarek Taylor. Thanks to Kirsten, who was around. I think she was our videographer today, and also for a little side project that I'll introduce in a second. Thank you to Sam Mazurek, who is the producer of a surprise that you'll see in about 1 minute. Thank you to Abigail Mazurek, who is Jennifer's daughter, who was our harpist in the grand foyer when you walked in today. Incredible. Thank you to our summer students, Dagmara, Holly, and Evan. This is, I think, their 5th day at work, and they think that every day is like this, so they're in for a bit of a shock. Thanks to our articling students, Nasir Azmi, Alex Wong, Bobby Jones, Maya Abbas, and Paul Irish. They were also your greeters at the door today. A special shout out, special shout out to Maya, who prepared some incredible background information that was really used by all the panel members today. So thank you, Maya, for that. And mostly, thank you to the seminar committee. I get to stand up here and look like I did all of the work, but really I do nothing but stand in front of you. This seminar comes together by the hard work and a lot of hours. You've met all of them today because they were your speakers. It's Danielle Malone, Meredith Harper, Kate McLeod, Andrew McCaig, Matt Owen, Marni Miller, and the incomparable Jen Griffiths, who has been living and breathing this seminar, I think pretty much since the day after the last seminar ended. And thank you very much to Stan Byrne, who was our marketing guru. I think Stan might be in the back. Stan, thank you. Yeah, thanks for giving her applause. Stan is absolutely fantastic. She not only produces this entire thing, she's in charge of all of the website and has the incredibly difficult task of trying to manage lawyers. I'd like to thank most of all of you, our clients. We have the privilege of being able to do your work. We are very, very thankful for that opportunity, and we do not take that for granted. Thank you so much. I hope that our dedication to your files is shown not just in events like this, but how we handle your files every single day. I hope that you will all take the opportunity to call us anytime that you have a problem, whether it's file related or not. That's part of our service to you. And again, before we go out, we do have a small gift for everyone. It's a swag bag that you can pick up on your way out. We hope that you're not leaving yet, though. I do remind everyone, please do not drink and drive. There is a taxi chit available for all of you. You can pick it up at the reception desk. We want everyone to be safe, and this event will not be a success unless everyone gets home safely. You'll find in this swag bag that there is a bit of an unusual item. I have no doubt that it's going to be a collector's item one day, so hold on to it dearly. It might be a little bit confusing to you, and so we have a bit of a short video to explain it to you. So thank you all for coming. I hope you've had a fun and informative day. Enjoy the video, and please stay and enjoy a drink with us as well. So thank you all.